First things first, I'll introduce myself. My name is Kit, and I'm the Assistant Curator for the Brent Biennial 2022, which is titled In the House of My Love. My pronouns are she, her, and a quick audio description of myself. I'm a white woman in my 20s. I've got bright red hair that is tied in a low bun. I've got blue eyes, and I'm wearing a black knitted vest. And I've got chunky silver earrings on. My background is pretty boring. It's just a white wall. You can see a little bit of sofa. And yeah, I'll pass over to Shivaangee, who's going to do the audio description today.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Shivaangee, and I'll be, as Kit said, doing the audio description. I am a 30-year-old Indian brown-skinned woman. My hair is tied up and my sides are shaved. I'm wearing a red corduroy printed shirt and a grey t-shirt underneath. And I have a lemon yellow background with books and other objects from my life. Yeah, I'm really excited about being here, especially with the artist as well. So I'll pass back to you, Kit.
Okay, so before we start talking about Rebecca's work, I'll give you a quick introduction to Metroland Cultures and to the Brent Biennial for those of you who aren't familiar with our work. So Metroland Cultures is a new charity that's part of the legacy of the London Borough of Culture programme for Brent 2020. And this summer, we're running the second Brent Biennial, which is titled In the House of My Love, which asks how and why the act of making home can be a form of resistance and survival within the context of hostile environments. And when we say hostile environments, we mean literally the hostile environment policy that was implemented under Theresa May's government 10 years ago this year, but also a broader understanding of the phrase and of hostility experienced in the home, including racism, homophobia, ableism, climate catastrophe, and political austerity. So In the House of My Love takes place in 3 cluster locations in the south of the borough, Kilburn, Willesden, and Harlesden, and presents 12 artist projects cited at 10 different venues and public spaces, and it's all open and free for audiences to visit from Thursday to Sunday, 12 to 6 until the 11th of September. So you've got 2 weekends left to come and see us if you haven't already. So I'll just explain the structure for today. So we're going to be thinking about the work of Rebecca Bellantoni, who's one of 12 artists commissioned to respond to the theme for the biennial. And today it's going to be a combination of audio descriptions, looking at the installation as a whole, and then looking at 5 moments in the film. We're going to play these clips, and then I'm going to give a bit of context and some interpretation, and then we'll have space for comments and questions. And while Shivaangee reads the audio description for each clip, I'm going to share stills as a visual aid, and the tour will last an hour and a half until 3:30. So please feel free to have a break and come back, and to turn your camera off if you need, and to share as much or as little as you'd like. So, and lastly, before we start, this is our first audio description tour of the biennial. I'm really excited to be doing this, and we'll share a feedback form with you at the end. So we really appreciate any suggestions on how we can do it better next time. Okay, so I'll introduce Rebecca's work. So the work that we're thinking about today is titled You Have Any Peace for Me, C.R.Y. And it's the second chapter of Rebecca's ongoing trilogy project, C.R.Y. Concrete Regenerative Yearnings, which is an exploration into the geographical landscapes, architectures, materials, people, spiritual lives, and energetic leftovers of the city as a trigger for positive transformation and meditation. So working with the potentials and the constraints of opacity through the use of the color black and obscured lighting, C.R.Y. is home for many works, including moving image, performance, textile, writing, and sculpture. You Have Any Piece for Me comprises a commissioned new film, which will be the focus of today's audio description, and an installation that reflects on specific experiences of the hostile environment and the trauma it inflicts, alongside the dissolution of a community that Bellantoni was part of when growing up, who had embraced Rastafari as both a spiritual way of life and a political lens through which to view the world. So in this work, Bellantoni celebrates the love and learning that can extend from being part of a community, while simultaneously considering the ways that trauma can be held within it, focusing on both literal and symbolic journeys that can be taken towards individual healing and community regeneration. You Have Any Piece for Me points towards the many ways in which Black British people face enduring hostilities in the UK, whilst also highlighting how the children and grandchildren of past generations have been taught to learn and develop tools to navigate these hostile environments with mental, physical, and spiritual resilience. So I'm going to hand over to Shivaangee for our first couple of audio descriptions, and then we'll have a look at the first clip. So I'm just going to share some stills and then we can start. Bear with me 1 second.
I think I can start the audio instruction kit while you're finding the stills. So You Have Any Piece for Me is an immersive exhibition set within a rectangular room that has been painted entirely black, floor to ceiling. As you enter from the brightly lit corridor, the darkness of the room confronts you, and while you adjust to the lack of light, the familiar sweet smell of roses wafts through the space. At the left of the room, a black and white film is being projected onto the black wall. A bench-like structure and large beanbags invite you to sit down and watch. Details of the space emerge from the darkness over time. To the right and left side of the seating area, objects and cords hang from the ceiling and projector. It is difficult to discern what these are by looking, but they resemble crinkly dried leaves hanging off of a branch. To the right side, there is a black drape hanging vertically down with white lettered words handwritten down it. Words from the title of the work, You Have Any Piece for Me, are scattered down the drape, along with an extra we and you. These words seem to be in a random order with an image that resembles a brain. The word we at the bottom of the fabric is circled. Towards the back of the room, a dim light spotlights a black rucksack on the ground. It is covered in dark red roses, petals scattered around. Behind it, a doorway opens into an antechamber. A waist-high plinth stands in the center of this small rectangular room. The top of this plinth is covered in a soft black fabric and holds various sculptures. These are small and abstract with shiny smooth surfaces where black, grays, and white meet. Two of these sculptures are placed on small shelves which protrude from the back wall of this room. The light source in this room is a hanging bulb in the center of the ceiling, which is dressed in black strands of wire and fabric. The film we're about to delve into contributes in a large way to the immersive experience of this work. It is a black and white film that pivots strongly on darkness and contrast, and features the rucksack and roses that we encounter in the installation as key members of the work. Rebecca is the protagonist that we follow closely through the lens. She is a Black woman with long braids, dressed in black jeans and a black jacket. As she travels through various locations in Brent, our attention is drawn to the urban landscape that surrounds her: buildings, gates, doorways, bridges, and roads. She encounters these concrete structures gently, moving through them, dancing in front of them, singing beside them. Location and love have been important considerations in Rebecca's work, though this is her first work in which she travels through them and leaves them behind. This is also her first screen dance, a genre in which the filmography plays a significant part in the performance. The film features long shots that follow her walking through locations, besides static shots in which we witness her encounter with the built environment. Sometimes these scenes are delineated with a blackout, during which we are left with the soundscape. We will hear a variety of different sounds, all devised by Rebecca. These include text and poetry spoken through a pre-recorded voiceover, songs sung by Rebecca in the film, the sounds of the city and instrumental music. The soundscape is drawn from Rebecca's memories of growing up in the Rastafari community in Brent. She shares these original sounds with us generously through this film. Assistant Curator Kit Edwards has chosen a series of clips from the film, which we will experience in chronological order, perhaps a bit like landmarks on this journey that Rebecca is taking us on. So that's the end of the audio introduction, and I can hand back to Kit to get us into the first clip.
Yes, sure. Let me just stop sharing. Here we go.
Great, so as we said, I'll be doing the audio description of each clip before we see it, and then it will play, and then we'll have time to discuss. So clip number 1. Rebecca crouches in front of a large graffitied pillar wearing sunglasses. Multiple pillars can be seen into the distance, holding up a huge flyover. A bright white sky shines in from the top left of the frame, while traffic ebbs and flows to the right. In this black and white image, she is central to the frame and focus, alone with a large rucksack. As the camera slowly zooms into her, she is strapping flower bouquets to her bag. She finishes up, thrusts it up onto her back, and looks at the camera, ready. We hear a voiceover as she begins her journey through the dark concrete underpass. When the light from outside finally streams in, we realize her backpack is completely engulfed in roses, and these form the focal point as the camera follows close behind her.
Okay, so I will share the first clip from the film and let me know if the sound is working okay.
I think the film isn't playing yet, Kit. It's not being shared.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, great.
Okay. Is the sound working okay?
Kit, we've got a grey box in front of the
Boundaried,
film. I wonder if we can
grateful,
start again without it.
loved, cleansed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Boundaried, prayed for, loved, cleansed, seen, but not resourced. Wise words given, digested, and placed beneath your feet. Where does theory live? Here? Set off. Tendrils of open grip, open wrist, open light, open, and when it loosens, you stand still for the grasp, open, and gasp, open, walk.
Okay, so that's the first clip that we're going to be thinking about. So in this clip, we get the sense that she's preparing for and beginning a journey. So we have this long moment of pause at the beginning. It's a little bit longer than we saw in the clip, where we're slowly zooming in on her preparing this rucksack of roses. We might think about, what use or what meaning this object might have for beginning a journey, and the journey that she's about to take. So red roses classically are quite rich with symbolic meaning, particularly of love. And though the film is black and white, I'm assuming that they're red because there's something that Rebecca's used a lot in previous works, and they're part of this visual language that she's built up throughout the trilogy, of which this work is the second installment. So place also feels really important here too. We open with the artist centered in an underpass, and there's abandoned crates, there's graffiti, there's traffic, and it's distinctly the space of a city. And it's a space that's demarcated into layers. So we've got the overpass, the underpass, the road, the street, the unused concrete space. We have fencing and billboards and signs all severing up the city into different planes. And in the opening shot, we can actually see that there's a road sign that's in the top right of the screen, which again isn't quite included in the clip that I just showed you. But it's in the first couple of seconds, and it's directing us to northwest to Kensal Rise and Notting Hill Gate and Bayswater. So this sort of specificity of place is the starting point for the journey. But to me, it feels less like a main character of the film, but a focus on the artist's relationship to the place. So we've got this balance between, hyper specific location and something that's a bit more slippery and a bit more, I guess, familiar but placeless. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts about that or any questions about that first clip. You can put them in the chat as well if that's easier. Okay, shall we move on to the second clip? Because we're quite early on, so maybe it's a bit tricky to respond just now. Okay, so Shivaangee, are you okay to go into the second AD?
Yeah. Okay, so Shivaangee speaking here. It is bright again, perhaps a sunny afternoon. Rebecca stands in front of large iron gates of the type that may belong to a church building or community centre. She is in the middle of our frame, facing to the left, and again, she is alone. Hands clasped, she sings, flowers dangling off her back and dancing with her as she sways from side to side. As her gentle voice fades out and is replaced by a soft voiceover, she sets off again and resumes her journey. She walks on the cobbled road of a residential street, smart terraced houses lining each side. She passes a white van on her left and a bicycle leans against a door on her right. Many of the houses are framed by large potted plants, and for these brief moments, there are unexpected resonances between the roses adorning her back and the foliage she passes by on the street.
Okay, let's have a look at the clip. So I'm just going to get us to the right time. 7:50. Yeah.
Come, join hands, and let's unite. Cast away the cause that caused the fuss and fight. Love is the conqueror, and love is the key, and love is the gateway to harmony. So, this is about regeneration, which means towards the original, for me. Something of the original, some thing, glissant. Our landscape is its own monument. Its meaning can only be traced on the underside. It is all history. From the estates to the muse, from the west to east, move, 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 move. This is about the journey of regeneration in the place that you are. No way to speak about ourselves if we do not question what the topography doubled meaning has done to us, what we have offered to the place in labor, more. What have we energetically added to the space? What are the contents of the city's last will and testament? Are we named? What will we leave? We round corners and know what is coming. We lay in concrete bowls and turn them into satellites. We kick glass and see futures. We pick.
Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay, so the beginning of this clip, Rebecca is singing outside of the Yar Centre, which is a carnival arts centre just off the Harrow Road in Maida Vale. And it opened in 1978 and was previously known as the Factory. And it was a popular community activity centre for the Black community that Rebecca grew up with. And she's turned away from the camera so we can see her profile, and seems to be singing to the building, but also to herself. So we're sort of witness to this intimate moment. And it's an original song that she learned while she was part of this community when she was a child. And it's one that she's passed on to her family and is generously sharing with us through this film. So there's this thing that remains after centres like this, and after communities shift and change and close, and move on or are moved on. And this song sort of acts as a residue of this community, but which through this act of sharing lives on and manages to escape erasure. So in the speech in this clip, Rebecca is quoting Edward Glissant, who was a French writer, philosopher, literary critic, and who is one of the most influential Caribbean thinkers. And my interpretation of this section, I'm by no means a Glissant expert, but my interpretation is that she's inviting the audience, but specifically working class communities living in the city, to think about their landscape or their environment as a monument itself, as something that we can read history in. And where she says, move, 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 move. To me, she's inviting the audience to be a witness to this history and to this regeneration, to question our surroundings, so that there can be a way for people to speak about themselves through the space that they inhabit. And walking is her strategy for bearing witness to this environment. So she also speaks here to unrecognized, unpaid, undervalued labor when she says what we have energetically added to space. And she asks what might be left to the communities, to the working class communities, to the migrant communities, to Black and Brown communities who've built this city, what will be left to them in the end. But she also speaks to an embodied knowledge that exists in these communities with their environment. When she says, we round corners and we know what's coming. We lay in concrete bowls and turn them into satellites. We kick glass and we see futures. So this is a relationship between people and place that transcends time and transcends the borders of space and transcends traditional forms of knowledge. So I don't know if that resonates with anyone, or if anyone has any questions or comments about that, then yeah, please do share.
I wonder if, I know this, throwing this out there, I wonder if we can watch the clip again with sort of what you've just said. I don't know, I feel like I would find that helpful just to.
Yeah, let's do it. Just bear with, it takes me a minute to get the film up, so that's why I'm slow, just so you all know. Okay. So, here we go. I might give us a little bit more of the singing because it's so nice. But yeah.
To everyone, it's a comfort and joy. To everyone, come join hands and let's unite. Cast away the cause that caused the fuss and fight. And love is the conqueror, and love is the key, and love is the gateway to harmony. So, this is about regeneration, which means towards the original, for me, something of the original, some, thing, glissant. Our landscape is its own monument. Its meaning can only be traced on the underside. It is all history. From the estates to the muse, from the west to east, move, 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 move. This is about the journey of regeneration in the place that you are. No way to speak about ourselves if we do not question what the topography doubled meaning has done to us, what we have offered to the place in labor, more. What have we energetically added to the space? What are the contents of the city's last will and testament? Are we named? What will we leave? We round corners and know what is coming. We lay in concrete bowls and turn them into satellites. We kick glass and see futures. We pick.
Okay, does anyone have any thoughts or questions about that section?
I had some, sorry, excuse me. It's Mira speaking. I just had some general thoughts that came up and like resonated in the sense that this like in-betweenness, this following on from the first clip as well, like the in-betweenness of diaspora identity and having roots and culture that has migrated through from country to country. There's something really quite like, I guess maybe it's an association in myself of like flowers with ritual and blessing on this journey, I guess, that Rebecca's taking us on and taking herself on. Yeah, and I guess more like general thoughts around like how we occupy space and not be ruled, and how communities like the ones Rebecca has experienced and many others like that are kind of given permission to occupy. And yeah, like you said, that community centre, is it that it's not there anymore, or is it not in the community in the same way?
It's still there, it's still operating. I think it's just changed. Yeah, it's just changed over the years. Or Rebecca, I'm not sure if you know, if you can speak to the ways that it's changed or about why it's featured. Not to put you on the spot.
It's okay. It's still used by the Black community, but actually it's more focused on carnival culture now and math making. But I think the community stopped using that space in the same way because the community broke up outside of the building for reasons that are discussed in part 1 of the work. But the building is still in the hands of the Black community, happily and luckily, because of smart thinking by the people at the time who were running the building. They managed to get ownership of it because it had become so derelict before they took it over. So it is still in the hands of the community.
Thank you. Yeah, and yeah, I guess it led me on to think about like occupying places like that in peace to ourselves, and it sounds as though the community took that as opposed to peace to those who give permission.
Exactly.
So we've just had one more person join us. Hi, Enoch. We've just done 2 audio descriptions so far, but we've still got a couple to go, and we're recording it, so I can send you the full recording later, just so you know. Steph shared a comment. So Steph said there was something striking about the lyrics, "Love as a gateway," being situated in front of a locked gate whilst holding the roses. Any other thoughts or comments before we move on to the 3rd audio description?
I guess I want to,
I'll just say quickly that the larger gate is locked, but the small gate is open. So I think that the smaller gate to the left of it is open. I think that's important as well to see that it might seem like maybe the smaller thing, the harder thing, but it is there, the opening is there.
Okay. Great. Shall we go on to the 3rd audio description? Perfect.
Okay, Shivaangee speaking. Smiling slightly, Rebecca dances towards the camera, rucksack still on her back. Shoulders caved in and feet shuffling to the beat, she spins one way and then another. She's on a wide pavement with a leafy iron fence to the left of the frame and a road to the right. The music continues and she walks towards the camera, settling for a spot near a brick wall on the left. She offloads her rucksack onto the ground, unties 2 of the flower bouquets, and places them on top of the wall. Taking a small piece of white chalk from her pocket, she crouches down and writes out a message on the pavement. Her left hand holds onto the wall and the camera zooms into the words. Against the grey of the concrete and next to the dark black of her jeans and boots, the writing looks white. She ends the message with 4 arrows pointing upwards to the text, picks up her rucksack and leaves while the camera continues to stare at the message, center stage. In her absence, we notice dried, fallen leaves and other unidentifiable but familiar debris of the street. The message appears on the screen in a large capital typeface, light grey and almost camouflaged against the colour of the pavement. Larry, Gloria, the love. The imagination comes from you. You flow through these streets, the spiral, the battery. We are left briefly with the only coloured moment in this film, a bright red filtered shot of the roses on top of the brick wall, leaves fluttering slightly in the breeze.
Okay, so I'll just share the film clip. Okay, so in this moment, sort of reflecting on the idea of monuments that came up in the previous clip, we see Rebecca dancing, leaving roses and leaving a message in chalk at this site for Larry and Gloria. So this is an act of memorialization, of gratitude, of celebration, and of love, but it's explicitly active. So it's the opposite of how we might think of a monument. You know, the chalk will wash away, the roses will decompose, and Rebecca leaves the scene, but for a moment they activate the space. So there's a deliberate choice for ephemerality rather than you know, something staying for a long time and being static. So to leave behind something that won't last, or perhaps surrendering to the fact that it won't, it feels like an acknowledgement of the city as a space of constant transformation. I wonder if that resonates with anyone's experience of the city, or if there are any other comments or questions about that scene. And let me know if you want to watch the scene again. So Steph has just said, yes, please, could we see the text still again too? Yeah, so I'll play it again and I'll pause it for a minute on the text. There we go. So the text reads, Larry, Gloria, the love, the imagination comes from you. You flow through these streets, the spiral, the battery. Okay.
I haven't really, oh, sorry. Somebody's put a comment in the chat.
So Shivaangee has just shared the text in the chat if people want to read that as well. And then Mira has shared a comment which says, really enjoy the fragmentation of the music, like petals of flowers, leaves off trees, the punctuation of the text, the breaking of the chalk, as Rebecca writes. Yeah, that's really beautiful. Thank you. Eliel's nodding along. Do you have a comment?
I wanted to ask something to Rebecca, which is a bit unfair because this is not an event to ask Rebecca questions. But I wondered, because this particular part of the work and the text, you have edited it very specifically so that it evades legibility. Like it appears so quickly, like it's literally like a fragment of a second, and it kind of like just like flashes at you and you kind of see that this text, but you can't really tell what it is. And equally, when you're writing the chalk, the scene isn't recorded in a way that we're supposed to necessarily understand what's being written. It kind of refuses that understanding a little bit. And I think that I wondered how you felt about that in the context of not necessarily now and this, because it's a different thing and we're unpacking the work in a different way, but just generally those decisions of refusing certain things, how they translate in a context of, I guess, understanding the work or engaging with the work, and whether you think those things are necessary or, yeah, I'm just curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, the speed of the edit comes from earlier works, specifically a work called Altered Altars, which is where the roses feature in the same way in Alters, and so does the text. It's different text, but in the same way. But the speed is important and the illegibility is important too in the watching of the film, different in this context. But my thinking is that if you know, you know. So if you know this, if you recognize the space that I'm in, then you'll understand. But even with a very short amount of time, you'll be able to read the words in that way of, you know, if you say, let's look for red cars today, you're going to see red cars all of a sudden. It's that thing of just an intuitive thing that starts to happen once you know something, once you start to ask for that thing. So I think the people from my community who have come to see the work, they actually have been able to read it, or at least to understand what it is that I'm saying in that text. And so therefore, for the people who don't know what I'm saying, if they're watching it in the exhibition context, there is no ability to pause it. You can't go back, you have to just go through it. I hope that there's some level of opacity in it. You know, I haven't stated why all of those spaces that are in, I haven't said why, you know, but if you know, you know. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Just FYI, I need to go very soon, but it's been so amazing so far. Thank you.
Thank you. See you later. Does anyone have any more questions or comments for that section, or are we happy to move on? Okay, I'm going to take that as a yes. So, Shivaangee, are you okay to do the third AD? No, the fourth AD. Fourth AD. Okay, I'm going to share some pictures.
Shivaangee speaking. This one's a bit longer, so bear with me. In the dark of the night, Rebecca stands outside of a block of terraced flats, facing a brightly lit doorway. The white light emanates from underneath a large awning and illuminates her face and the front of her body. Against the backdrop of the night, this functional light seems extreme and otherworldly. Rebecca's shadow stretches behind her out beyond the right side of the frame as she stands, smoking. She flicks the cigarette away and prepares herself as the voiceover begins. She rearranges her hair and clothing, slowly raises her arms and leans backwards into a long stretch. She curves her torso forwards and continues this rocking motion. Then, knees bending, she folds forwards until her hair hangs down vertically in front of her legs. The rucksack also falls forwards, it drops, and the image cuts. The soundscape continues as there is a blackout and change of scene. This is another brightly lit arrangement against the backdrop of pitch black nighttime. Rebecca is hanging over a wooden fence-like structure. It is high but not wide. It stands alone on a grassy curb. Camouflaged against the darkness, we can barely see Rebecca as she dangles. Instead, the flowers on her back perch at the top of the structure, brightly lit, perhaps by a street lamp. To the right of the screen, we glimpse an abandoned oven and a coffee table on the street, some black bin bags. Nothing moves apart from the slight rocking of the flowers on her back and the gentle sway of the grass in the night breeze. The soundscape once again continues through a blackout and change of scene. This time, Rebecca is on all fours on the ground by the entrance to another building. A square light box on the wall of the building illuminates her into a silhouette. One leg extended behind her and one arm extended in front of her. Her hand hovers just above the ground as she traces something in the concrete. She is still, mainly, and her rucksack straps flutter in the breeze. A car zooms past our frame as she shifts into a crouch, both feet on the ground, elbow resting on her knee. As she rests again in stillness, our attention is drawn to the bare walls glowing in the light behind her. Suddenly, the soundscape cuts and changes. She changes position again, this time half standing with knees bent and one arm half outstretched in a fist. Beyond the outline of her body, any other details are obscured in the darkness, while behind her, the glass panels in the door shine bright and white. As the voiceover begins, she crouches down again, one knee resting on the paved floor. Another silhouette runs past her. She leaves, leaving us with an unobscured view of the illuminated door. In the last change of scene, we are moving again, following Rebecca through the night. For the first time, we have a close-up of Rebecca's face without her sunglasses. She passes the camera by, and we are again faced with the bobbing backpack of roses.
Okay. So in this moment in the film, Rebecca stands beneath the awning of a block of flats.
We haven't seen it yet, I think, right?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
My fault. Let me just share the clip. Okay. Here we go.
Do you remember what inflicted the heavy blow that caused the initial crack? Or just the gap we all learned was there and to jump over? But before the jump comes the falls, the trips. She, we, us, reflect in wonderment. What caused the initial crack? Before the jump, before the fall, before the trips. Did not warn, did not protect, did not get us ready to what was coming next. We walked, exuberant, balanced, until its purpose, its destruction. The children who watched the libation. All along the way, the children had been watching and imagining solutions, hearing the voice of those who had gone before and remained and waited for hard brown drops that raise upwards to spirit and down to earth and join in the reality center. In your lap, in your lap, your cupped hands, your back, your shoulders, your knee to high, your pain, your, our, God's own trauma. Set your foot down. Set your foot down. It is solid. It is home. Anywhere I set my foot, anywhere I set my foot, unsocked, unshoed, helped by regeneration is needed, was anyway, since I am here, anyway, hold my hand, share with me what I have, just an offer, build a place for you, we'll keep a place for you, per nanny.
Okay, so in this moment in the film, Rebecca is standing beneath the awning of a block of flats in the first scene. So she's facing the entrance and she's washed in this bright light, which feels almost feels religious, and it feels like a shift in energy compared to the previous scenes. There's something that feels more haunting here than in the previous clips. So this energy change is signaled by a few things, by sound, by movement, by light. So the sound is this sort of wavering, layered harmony that swoops and sounds to me like a lullaby, but more intense and more unnerving, perhaps because of the many voices that make up the harmonies. but also because the voices sound like wailing or crying. It's quite physically evocative, quite physically moving. Also the movement that she makes is different to previously in the film. So the way that she bends her body forwards, backwards rather, and then folds completely forward under the awning, and then she's hanging from the metal fence structure. She's sort of made into an object, or made part of her environment. So like the abandoned furniture that's behind her, the bright light that shines on that scene, on the second scene where she's hanging over the fence structure, it makes it feel like we've just stumbled across the scene, rather than it being a performance. So it feels sort of like a surrender to the environment. So rather than representing a subject, she becomes part of the space. And for me, that harks back to her thinking earlier in the film, where she quotes Glissant, where he says, if we do not question what the where she says rather, if we do not question what the topography doubled meaning has done to us. So she's thinking about the demarcation of land, the arrangement of the natural and artificial physical features of an area. And to me here, she's undoing this and becoming indistinguishable from her environment. So I don't know if that makes any sense, or if anyone has any comments or thoughts about that relationship with place, or maybe the use of light or movement in that scene, or if we want to watch it again, because it's quite a long one.
If I can chip in here with some unofficial thoughts. I feel like this is this clip was the first one that felt like Rebecca wasn't sort of like the active subject of what was going on, and sort of like the one making things happen, and the one we were following. The kind of, I think the 3 shots where we're watching her quite still with quite a significant source of bright light coming from somewhere else, or like quite dramatic lighting. And it feels like there's something otherworldly going on in all of those 3 shots, and maybe something that's happening to her. And she's sort of experiencing something onto her. So it felt a little bit like who was like the agent of the scene was kind of like changing from Rebecca to something more like surreal, or something that you can't put your finger on. And I also felt like, I remember Kit and I were talking about this yesterday, but the first image where she's standing facing the awning, sort of looking into the light, felt quite religious, or like reminded me of something spiritual or religious. And I think that that theme kind of continued for me over the 3 clips. Those are some thoughts.
Yeah, sorry to just piggyback of what you were saying yesterday, because we had a little chat about this before before today's tour. But Shivaangee, you were saying yesterday about the sort of black space behind Rebecca when she's over the metal structure, and then it sort of looks like a void. And it sort of feels like she's straddling this in-between space, where even though the location feels quite familiar and mundane and everyday, it's just, you can't really make out what it is. It's sort of like the corner of, whether it's just a curb and a bit of a park, or a bit of green. It could be a car park, it could be, the back of a block of flats, could be lots of different places, but it's quite familiar and quite everyday. But because of the light, because of this really, really bright light that's shining on her, and because of, I guess, the strangeness of what she's doing, and the fact that behind her it's completely blacked out rather, it feels like there's this vast open space behind her that's quite strange, and it makes the scene feel like you're sort of balancing in between reality and a sort of dream space. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, it's just thinking about how the light almost feels like a character. Well, thanks, Mira. Mira is just leaving, but thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. Okay, I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts on that section, or we can watch a bit of it again if that's helpful. Okay. All right, let's go on to the last section. So I'll share the images and then we can start the AD.
Rebecca looks ahead, still walking, this time against the white lights of shop fronts. The camera moves in step with her, gazing up at her from her side. The shot cuts to another woman, older, also dressed in black. She has her eyes closed and looks at peace as she walks forwards towards us, hands rising and fingers joined at the thumb and forefinger. Bright lights once again shine in the street. The shot cuts back to Rebecca as she walks, a neutral expression on her face. Momentarily, both women cross paths, traveling in their own distinct ways. We stay with Rebecca as she puts down her rucksack in front of large iron gates and looks directly at the camera. We cut to a wide shot of Kilburn Market, closed and quiet at night. Rebecca dances in front of the iron gates and the center of our frame, lit brightly by the street lamps. As the camera very slowly zooms into her, she disappears regularly behind layers of passing traffic. For one long moment, she is obscured by a bus that stops across the screen, and instead of Rebecca, we see the dark figures of passengers sitting and rising. As she swings her hips from side to side, raises her arms, and drops her head in surrender to the music, she is the one constant in this relentless motion of traffic.
Okay, let's watch the last clip. Okay, so this is the final section that we're going to be looking at today, and it feels in the same vein as the last clip. It's quite surreal, and feels like it has a slightly different energy to the first three that we looked at. So the woman who walks past Rebecca is someone that Rebecca grew up knowing, that was part of her community. And the moment between the two is quite strange because she doesn't acknowledge the woman. They don't look each other in the eye. They don't stop. They don't say anything to each other. So it almost feels like she's a memory or part of her imagination, or that she's not really there. And thinking about what Shivaangee was speaking about in the last section, with the light being almost like a protagonist in the film. When the woman walks in, we can see this really bright light behind her, and she's got her eyes closed, and it feels like she's a saint, or something holy that's entering the film. So to me, she sort of represents that the community lives on despite not existing in the same form, and it lives on through memory, through song, through relationships, and through us bearing witness to this journey that Rebecca's going on throughout the film. So there's regeneration through this sort of generous passing on of knowledge, and through the sharing of this journey, and through the journey continuing. So the woman passes Rebecca, and she's going on her own journey, and the buses pass and life goes on and journeys continue and nothing is static. This dancing moment, the way that the world continues all around her, I think speaks to this idea of being part of the environment that I mentioned in the last clip, when I was talking about her being almost part of the space when she's hanging over the fence structure. So it's less about subject and rather, I guess the space is a subject and you're part of that, rather than being a person represented in an abstract space, or a space that's represented as distinct from a person. I don't know if that makes any sense, but are there any questions or comments about that section, or we could watch it again? Because I cut off the dancing too soon, I think, but we can watch that for a little bit longer if that's helpful. Okay, so Steph would like to see it again, so I'm going to play it one more time. Okay, just bear with me 1 second. Okay. Okay, so I played that a little bit longer because the dancing's too good. Does anyone have any final thoughts or questions on that last scene, or just general thoughts on the film as a whole? Okay. All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to Shivaangee for amazing audio description and for, yeah, just being a great tour guide today. Thanks, Rebecca, for joining us and for sharing your thoughts with us and for the work. And yeah, I am going to share a feedback form in the chat, and I'm also going to email it out to everyone. Please be honest with your feedback and let us know yeah, what you enjoyed and what could have been better, because it's all really helpful. And if anyone would like to see what else we're doing for the rest of the biennial, we've got 2 more weekends left, and we've got quite an exciting program of closing events, one of which includes a performance by Zinzi Minot, which you can get free transport to from our visitor hub in Kilburn. Tickets are available on our website. I'm just putting them in the chat now. And lastly, I'm gonna play us out with a song that was chosen by Rebecca, which is Phyllis Dillon's Woman of the Ghetto. And it speaks really well to the work. So I'm just gonna play that out. Thank you so much, guys. Going to play a bit of ad music and then it'll
Swap to a new phone anytime you like. Any reason, as often as you like. With no need to pay off your contract for an extra $3.99 a month bolt-on or included on selected plans.
Okay. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. Hopefully see you again for another audio description in the next biennial, and maybe see you at the last couple of events. Thanks, guys. Bye.